Thanks for downloading this broadcast of The Resilient Advisor. My name is Jay Coulter, and this podcast is, it's live and I botched the intro, Sean. How about that?
Man, we're off to a bad start here, pal.
Excellent. We're starting over. Thanks for tuning into this podcast of the Resilient Advisor podcast. My name is Jay Coulter. Joining me for this episode is Sean Brown, the CEO of YCharts. And we are going to debrief a very, very interesting survey that his team published on client communications, and the results will provide you with some actionable strategies for your practice. Sean, thanks for coming back on the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, pal. And let's hope the rest of the podcast picks up speed here and no fumbles. Let's get going.
For podcast listeners, we are recording this live on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And I botched the open, which works well in podcasting, not so well in live broadcast.
And it is being broadcast to the space station. So everybody in the space station, hello.
All right. So first, full disclosure for anybody listening, I am a big YCharts fan. One of my clients calls me a YCharts fanboy. I'm not really sure of that term, but it does kind of fit. So, Sean, we had our first question on LinkedIn from a gentleman named Andrew Wyndham, and he asked me to ask you about the basketball story and the impact it had on your life. So why don't we start with that and then get into the results of the survey?
That's hilarious that's the first question. I posted something on LinkedIn I don't know, maybe it was a month and a half or so ago. It was a story about a beautiful lie that impacted my career. And the abbreviated version of the story was, I was a young, pimply, insecure kid who went to a basketball camp and had a wonderful but a heartbreaking camp where I came in second in literally every award that could be given. At the conclusion of the camp, I ended up winning the biggest award at the banquet they had, called the Phil Scafidi Award. It was in honor of a fallen prior captain. And this just built my confidence. My pimples didn't seem so ugly, and my gawkiness just didn't feel, and I was just confident. I wrote college essays about this, and it shaped my self-confidence during a pivotal time. Long and short is, almost 20 years later, at my sister's wedding, I heard from that head basketball coach that the only reason I had won that award, which came with a free week of camp the next year, was because I was already a free camper, because my dad was the head coach's friend. And so basically, he didn't want to give a free camp to anybody the next year except somebody who was already free. So I won an award that shouldn't have given me all this confidence, but it did.
Well, it worked, though.
It worked, and it was a beautiful lie, and I couldn't be happier that I was lied to in retrospect.
All right, let's dive into this client communication survey that your team did. For broadcast viewers, you'll see the link to the survey scrolling across your screen. Podcast listeners, I will have it in the show notes. Sean, the survey was of more than 650 individuals, all of whom currently employ the services of a financial advisor or wealth manager. And they were asked questions regarding their advisor's communication style and preference. There were three major insights from that study, and I found them fascinating. You want to walk us through it?
Yeah, first I have to tell you, the exact number of respondents to this survey was 666. And because I don't like that number at all, and I don't like that implication, I've asked my marketing team to just say it was greater than 650. But thank you for the intro. I think there were three big insights that came from this survey, again, to people who are advised. And the three insights were, number one, your clients don't feel engaged with you. Number two is they want personalized communication. And number three is there's huge impacts of not doing what they're requesting. Mm-hmm. And a real quick one is, I read an article the other day about in the year 2000, Blockbuster Video had the opportunity to buy Netflix for then $50 million. And Blockbuster Video didn't see any impetus for this kooky model out there called digital dissemination of video. $50 million in 2000, Blockbuster could have still been in existence. Today, I think Netflix is worth $150 billion and Blockbuster doesn't exist. So I liken the challenge that advisors have to the same thing. Either you reinvent and morph yourself or face the consequences.
I like it. And I tell you, it's a challenge that I have in my coaching and consulting practice is encouraging advisors to increase their frequency of communication. What really stood out to me from your survey specifically was that 46% of respondents with over $500,000 in assets didn't feel like they were hearing from their advisor enough. Isn't that shocking to you?
People have told us they hear more relevant and timely communication from their gardener than they do from their advisor. And the irony of the fact that people are entrusting their hard-earned nest egg to other human beings to help them achieve their goals, but often the advisor goes dark on them. I just find that incongruous. And the thing I would say is those sins have been forgiven. We're in the 11th year of a crazy bull market. And when monthly statements come and they're always going upwards and to the right, people say, I'm not gonna give my advisor a hard time. It's happy time. Let's get out the confetti. Careful. Things will change.
Yeah, I'm old enough to have gone through the internet bubble and, of course, the financial crisis. And it's amazing how quickly advisors forget the importance of that communication. And the term was literally in the late 90s, the advisors were hiding under their desk because they just didn't want to talk to their clients. And it's hard to start that regular communication once things start going south, right?
Yeah, it absolutely is. But let's talk about the consequences. You took a look at our study, and again, I know you're making it available to your viewers / listeners. But the consequences are, number one, your clients aren't feeling as good about their financial plan. That's number one. Number two is your clients have a propensity to leave you for a better advisor, an advisor who meets their needs. And number three is the biggest source of new clients for advisors is referrals. Your clients are not likely to refer you if you are not communicating with them well. And actually, they're saying knowing me and communicating well with me is in fact more important than the investment returns that you deliver to me.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And from a human to human interaction, that makes a lot of sense. And we're fighting off the robo advisors and the big shops coming in with depersonalized service models.
Mm-hmm.
Now's the chance for advisors to make that hard pivot. And this is a nice softball into the second takeaway from your survey: personalize those communications.
Yeah. Again, your gardener or the person who might mow your lawn or the person who bags your groceries may know your name and may communicate with you about, you told me last week your kid had a soccer game. Like, somebody gives you $500,000, $1 million, $5 million, don't they deserve more than a mass-produced, system-produced statement or once a quarter a very, very generic-looking market perspectives deck? If I tried that with my wife, if I tried to say, hey, honey, I put together a blanket note to you, my wife would say, I'm going to go find somebody who's more attentive. And thank God, we do date nights. We say, how you doing? We stay connected with each other. We got to do that with our clients.
Yeah. And so a statistic from the survey that really stood out to me, but did not surprise me, is that clients responded to 75% of clients responded that they would like specifically their advisor to send interesting statistics, visuals, or articles relevant to portfolio holdings. I've coached advisors for years to know what they own, why they own it, and be able to articulate it. And because the way the industry has changed, most advisors have gotten away from that.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on advisors actionably delivering that?
Well, yeah, I mean, first of all, you teed up the type of stuff. If you have a client, first of all, you ought to know what things your client's interested in. But if your client in a meeting said, I have an interest in FANG stocks, or I'd like to learn more about crypto, or I'd like to understand how exposure to China or the Middle East or to tobacco impacts my portfolio or could impact my portfolio, stay in touch with them on these topics. How hard is it? Or it shouldn't be hard. And that's a problem we're trying to help advisors solve. It shouldn't be hard to pass through an interesting article, an interesting chart, an interesting statistic related to what that client's looking for, which, number one, educated that client. But most importantly, number two, it said from the advisor, I'm thinking about you. I've got your back. You don't have to worry about your financial well-being because I'm worried and you heard from me today, this week, or this month, rather than I just got a statement in an email or in the paper mail.
That they're not opening.
Yep, that they're not opening is right. And again, they may not be opening it during a bull market. Trust me when I say, when we start to get a shaky market, which it did look at a certain portion of last year like we might have, people are starting to scrutinize things. And the other thing I would say, Jay, that we got to keep in mind is there's a generation that's receiving $30 trillion worth of wealth transfer over the next couple decades. They are not their mom and dad in terms of their expectations, their willingness to do it themselves, their access to information, their desires to be communicating through various channels. If you're an advisor and you are retiring in the next couple of years, you may dismiss morphing and evolving. If you're planning on being in this business for a while, or you're planning on passing down your business to somebody else, you got to evolve the way you're communicating these things.
So let's go into the communication styles that you found in the survey. So really what we found so far is clients don't feel like they're receiving enough communication. It needs to be customized. And then the channel discovery here, I thought was interesting. So 79% of respondents would like to receive it via email still. So email is not dead, especially if it's customized. 29% text messages, 26 face-to-face. Sorry for all the folks watching us on social media. Down at the bottom of the list, 8% Twitter, 9% LinkedIn, 11% Facebook.
Yeah.
Interesting, isn't it?
It is, but one of the things you'll notice in our survey is the preferences are split between older and younger, and between large nest eggs and small nest eggs. And we will continue to do this study through time. I am guaranteeing you that the preference towards these new channels, while not yet a dominant preference, is growing through time.
So which do you feel, and I'm asking you to guess here, which channels do you feel are going to grow the most over this decade?
Well, I'll tell you what, a few of the social media channels, I feel like are table stakes now. I feel like, well, first of all, I feel like things like you're doing podcasts, I think those are incredibly important way. We're a very visual, very digital age. And if you're not thinking or doing a podcast, you certainly should be. Number two is channels like Twitter are very quick and easy ways for you to blast out something interesting to help build a new relationship or foster a relationship. Now, you and I are in dialogue on Twitter. You'll see when I get a curiosity, I'll create a visual and I'll blast it out. A, I'm curious, but B, I think some of the things I find out others might be interested in. So that's valuable. The other specific social media channel that I think people need to invest more in is LinkedIn. If you're in a business mindset already, you're probably connected to all the people you desire to be connected to. They come in a professional mindset and maybe a learning mindset. Use it to get your views out there.
A couple ideas around that, because I've had some success on social media channels. For LinkedIn, even if you consider yourself a B2C advisor, your potential clients are looking at your LinkedIn profile. It's not a resume, it's a marketing page. And if you Google yourself in an incognito browser, you will probably find that your LinkedIn profile is either at the top or near the top. And that's what your clients are finding. It's an invaluable resource. And as for Twitter, I use my YChart account on Twitter all the time, because you might be talking about a topic on a particular security, an index, or market trend. I simply jump on YCharts. They've got the simplest functionality to make my point visually, create it, download it, and post it in just a matter of seconds. So seconds. And The best part, you can brand it as well with your logo. So you talk about creating exponential reach with branded content. YCharts really does make that easy.
Yeah, and the most common pushback we receive from advisors about why they aren't communicating more and better, I don't have the time. I don't have the time. Make the time. Automate, get your processes down, incur a few more dollars of expenses to support this. You need to communicate. And yes, like you're saying, there are quick and easy ways you can get an opinion out there in a visual way in 3 to 5 minutes time, and you've got 3 to 5 minutes.
Yep, that's right. So if you are interested in a YCharts account, they are graciously offering a 20% discount to new subscribers if you mention the Resilient Advisor podcast. There's also a link going across the screen right now. If you want to sign up for a free trial, podcast listeners, I'll have those links in the show notes. Boy, once you start digging your teeth into a YCharts account, I know I'm a fanboy. It's a lot of fun. It has a lot of great tools in there to help you better execute on some of the things Sean and I are talking about right now. And that's a great pivot into what can advisors do about the findings from this survey?
Thank you. Because at the end of the day, I don't really care to speak unless we're saying something that we think can help advisors. And a couple big things we would coach advisors to do. Number one is think about a framework for better communication, and we propose one. It's a thought model. So if you envision a 2x2 matrix, and envision the y-axis being who do you want to communicate to, and two choices. Do you want to communicate to everyone and broadcast something, much like we're doing right now, or alternatively, do you want to narrowcast? Are you wanting to communicate with one individual or one family? So the Y dimension is who are you communicating to, narrow or broadcast? The X axis is this an ad hoc discussion, or is this something that's cadence and something that's planned for? So if you think about your communication in that framework, you're going to see there are occasions you want to broadcast in a well-defined and scheduled manner. An example could be for branding purposes or your quarterly market perspectives. You want to get your voice out there. You could say you want to broadcast, but it's ad hoc. Hey, the 10-2 yield curve inverted, and I need to get my opinion out there. I didn't know it was coming, or a jobs report, which came out today. I want to share with my market, whether prospects and clients, I want to share what happened in the market today. That's a whole different set of tactics. Or there's the very personalized ones, which is I have a client meeting today or a prospect meeting tomorrow. How do I get prepared for that? Or another version is, hey, I know Mr. Jones has told me through time he wants to know more about FANG stocks. Saw an interesting article on FANGs and why FANGs are or aren't going to continue on the upward trend in the future. That's a narrow cast version that's ad hoc. So first of all, think in a framework. Then once you've got a framework, commit to a cadence for communication. Make the 3 to 5 minutes. Make the time for it. Take advantage of these touch points to customers. It doesn't always have to be over a steak dinner. It doesn't always have to be on your iPad or a paper statement. There are new channels to communicate with. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I love the way you lay out the framework for communicating. It's one of the bigger challenges I find advisors have is not only building the cadence and system for doing it, but then creating those unique touch points for their clients. So there's an old study done by Robin Dunbar, I believe he was out of Oxford, that said the average human can only maintain 150 real relationships, and it has something to do with the size of our brain. So Sean, you could probably have more relationships than I could have.
I hit my 50s. I can only handle like 5.
But generally 150. But I have found from my experience when I dig into an advisor's book of business and we go through a segmentation process, there are about 15 or 20 relationships that really matter. And building a communication schedule to deliver those unique customized touch points will set you apart from the competition from day one. And whether you're using YCharts or not, it's an absolute no-brainer for client engagement because your competition is not doing it.
Yeah, I really hope it's motherhood and apple pie, but there are clients that you serve champagne to, and there's clients that you provide seltzer water to. And hey, who are the champagne clients? Your highest AUM or your greatest referral source or your most at risk client. Whatever it is, you know who they are. And you should have nobody who's neglected, but you've got the champagne clients. Make sure you're serving them champagne. Make sure everything about what you do, including your communication, meets their needs. But be careful not to neglect the other 85% of your book of business in terms of customer count, because they too have expectations to receive personalized communication from you.
That's right. And with technology today, it's easier than ever to deliver that in a systemized fashion.
I think so.
Yeah.
And you know, so the things we are trying to do when you think through this framework and stuff, this is all just for thought. It's to have a strategy. We are an enabler of that strategy once you've got your strategy nailed down. And we spend time with advisors talking to them about how to establish the strategy. But the things we do is either the raw tools to support creating a visual, a chart, or a screen security. So we've got all the raw tools, but a big emphasis for us at YCharts is how can we take a step farther than that and say, hey, all of our advisors are putting together quarterly market perspectives. And all of them have said to us, you know what? That is one of the most tedious, hard things I do. My clients value it, but I'm sinking hours and hours and days into this. How can you help me? So things that we're doing is creating some communication enablers, like a template quarterly market perspectives piece, PowerPoint slides with our charts embedded in them with suggested commentary. Our advisors can say, hey, I'm not going to take it wholesale word for word, but that's a wonderful starting point for me.
Yep.
Other things, every one of our clients is going in for prospect meetings where they want to compare their clients' current holdings with their proposed model portfolio. So we've got the templates for that and are saying, hey, for all of our clients who are saying they don't have time to communicate, let us give you some time back so that then you may communicate more broadly with your customer base.
Yeah. I found the proposal tool a game changer because it has never been easier to generate a proposal walking out the door to help an advisor with the client. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, so Sean, as we wrap this up, I want listeners to first, if you're on Twitter, go follow Sean on Twitter. You'll get an idea of the power of these charts as visuals to use them on social media. Sean, is it Sean YCharts?
It's Sean_YCharts.
Excellent.
At Sean_YCharts. Sorry.
Excellent. And I'd also reach out to him on LinkedIn. Sean's actually the best example of the best way to leverage YCharts. He put a post out, I believe it was towards the end of the year, the 10 charts of the decade. Just fantastic. I'll put links to that in the show notes, but follow Sean on social media and see the power of that tool. Sign up for a free trial. Links will be in the show notes. And then if you buy into the process and you see how it can have an impact on your business, mention the Resilient Advisor podcast, get a 20% discount for your first year. And if you're going to be out at the T3 conference next month, Sean and his team are hosting a session on Wednesday morning. Please come out and visit with them. Mm-hmm. Sean, thanks for coming on the podcast again. I love having you.
And I want a special shout out to the guests we mentioned earlier, which is in the International Space Station. Thank you guys for following us today.
Thanks, Sean.
Take care, Jay.